Hey everyone, it's Jesse with VVMTG. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I just want to try something new here. We recently ran our online leagues. Our online leagues are normally a 6-week period where you could play different decks. Each game win gets you a point, and then after the 6-week period, there's a top cut where your points determine the seeds and you end up playing for a prize. And the prize is normally just $30 that goes towards an actual paper deck list. The idea though is that all of the league is free, so that way you can play, compete, try some new things, maybe just have some fun. And then if you end up making the top cut, that you are able to get something out of it. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go through the decks that I ended up playing. I ended up winning the first series the first time around. This time I ended up getting second, so it was a pretty good run. I ended up having the highest amount of points after the 6-week period, and I actually ended up not playing week 1. I had a prior commitment I wasn't able to play. So ended up having the top amount of points. So I feel like a lot of these decks are really good choices, even if you're just trying to do something for FNM. So I want to go through them, talk about them kind of briefly, and then after that, we'll go through the deck list. I'll go through what my matches were from what I had notes for, and then talk about the top cut. So to start out, like I said, I didn't play week 1, so I was starting behind week 2. I wanted to get a feel for the meta from what I saw from the prior week, since a lot of the players end up being the same across each week. So I ended up just sleeving up Burn. Burn's very strong in VV. Its price point is really good based off of really Legacy Burn. A majority of this deck list is just what Legacy Burn is or was. The fact that you are able to play 4 Eidolon at $840 for the set is a testament to just how strong the deck is and how cheap a lot of the other cards are. You basically lose almost half of the deck's budget just in Eidolon and Lava Spike. And that's also playing 4 Canopy Lands and Fiery Islet. So Burn's very strong. It does have some tough sideboard answers. Like some people are playing Leyline. It's just Leyline of Sanctity. That is just because they're cheap. There's some good incidental life gain. So it's just something you kind of have to watch out for, is if you can just hit a majority of matchups and not the strange ones. Like there's some Soul Sisters Lantern control stuff going around occasionally. Like that's the type of thing you want to avoid. So my main deck's very stock Burn, I would say. Nothing here if you're familiar with the archetype super crazy. I have Skull Cracks for anti-life gain and Energy Field. Sulfuric Vortex for the slow decks, Molten Rain for Cloud Post stuff, and there's some greedier mana bases, and then Firecraft for the control deck. So my matchups that week, I ended up starting against High Tide. They got me in game 1. It was a pretty fast start. Games 2 and 3, I just had Eidolon on turn 2 both games, and they weren't able to find the snap before it mattered. That matchup feels pretty good. You just have to avoid their really fast start. But Eidolon's huge there. So it was 2-1 against High Tide. I played against Blue Post the next round. I had a really aggressive start game 1. They kind of went like tap land into like Expedition map, crack it. But at that point, I think they found a Glimmer Post, and I still just had enough damage. Game 2, I ended up bringing in all 4 Molten Rains, and I was able to go turn 3, turn 4 Molten Rain, and just kind of went really ahead there. I think it's really important for that matchup just because they can gain a lot of life from Glimmer Post. Post is popular enough that I would want to play Molten Rain. Sometimes they're playing things like Thragtusk too. Obviously not out of mono blue, but for normal Post, Thragtusk is an option. So you really just want to have something that can interact with their lands. And then Dark Depths is a thing too, so I really like Molten Rain just as an option there. And then the final round of that week was against Blue Black Fae, playing Skull Clamp. So that one I went 2-0. The deck was really sweet. It was playing like Fairy Fencing and things like that, but they just didn't have a whole lot of interaction game 1. They did Fairy Fencing my Goblin Guide, pretty early on, but they didn't have a whole lot of interaction for my spells, and I'm pretty sure I killed them with Exquisite Firecraft in the game too, and they just had counters, but they didn't have a way to interact with it. So that was a 3-0 with Burn. That was a pretty strong start off to the week. Week 2, I ended up playing my build of Rakdos Lurrus. So most of the Rakdos Lurrus builds are on an energy package. It's exactly what you probably think it is, and even looking at the deck list, just a mid-range deck. Playing the 4 baubles, Unstable Amulet, an energy outlet. You get Amped Raptor, card's huge. I'm personally on Glint Sleeve Siphoners. I think the card's really strong because it's a pseudo Bob. And then you end up just with random energy around. You end up being able to generate it too. And even if you don't put it into Glint Sleeve, you can pop the energy with Unstable Amulet. So, but it also has your basic like Inquisition Hymn the Torok package. So it's just pretty standard red-black mid-range. My matchups for that, I played against a Gear Hulk control deck round 1. Ended up going 2-0. I didn't have a lot of notes. I just remember having like some pretty him-heavy hands. And then just resolving an early threat. I know one game that I kind of beat them to death with Blood Tithe Harvester. So just really having like early pressure with some discard was enough to just, close the door on them. Round 2 was against Boros Convoke. With Convoke, I know the one game they had mulligan down to I think like a 5. And we had double him, so that one was kind of like a non-game. But the other game was actually pretty close. They were able to put some bodies in play. But Amped Raptor was actually the star there, just because you would go to combat. We had some early pressure, and they were kind of on the back foot because their hand wasn't super fast, but it was still decent. But Amped Raptor having first strike, even if they go Gleeful, it doesn't leave any good blocks, especially if you're pressuring them or hitting them with discard. Because if they go triple block, you blow up one of their guys, you're eating all 3 of them. So it's pretty solid. The one card I want to talk about too with it is like Gaunties. With Gaunties, I forgot to mention this in the Gear Hulk control. I was able... Oh, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't Gear Hulk control. It was Boros Convoke. So they were able to kind of poke back with their threats and like their tokens. When they're attacking, we're generating energy each turn. And that was able to kind of have us cycle cards with Unstable Amulet and Glint Sleeve. So Gaunties, I was testing it out. I wasn't sure if it was going to be good, but the card was actually impressive in my matchups. There are a lot of mid-rangey ones. And I just kind of liked what it did. So I'm fine with the 2, but I would encourage at the price point of 15 cents that people kind of try it out. It's not like backbreaking or anything, but if you have some flex slots, card's definitely interesting. And then the last round, I ended up playing against Hypergenesis. I ended up going 1-2. The match I won was like pretty heavy discard. We were able to just kind of pressure them. They had mulligan down. We were able to hit the cascade threats, and they were just kind of like drawing things that didn't cascade or Hypergenesis. And then we're just able to pressure them with the dorky creatures. The games I lost in that match, though, were due to them just being like just overall faster. I didn't have Inquisitions or Hymns before they could go off. My sideboard's also not pressed very well to deal with Hypergenesis. Like we have like a Curse Marauders, and that's basically it. It's just not a matchup you want to sit down against. It's not something that you really want to see. So outside of that, though, the rest of my sideboard, like the biggest thing that stood out to me, like I really like a lot of these sideboard choices. There are people that play Deadweight in their Lurrus sideboard that they try. I really liked Death's Approach. I had it against Boros, and just killing one of their early like Inspectors or Epicures, that typically ends up killing a majority of tokens and things like that. I think the game that was close, I think game 2 was the one that they didn't mulligan to like Oblivion. We ended up casting Death's Approach, I think, like 3 times off the Lurrus. So definitely a cool card to try out, in mid-range and creature matchups. Like I think it'd be pretty solid against humans as long as you kind of avoid them hitting your graveyard. But just kind of a card to keep on your radar at 2 cents. So that week we ended up going 2-1. So still pretty solid overall to start. This is probably my favorite deck I played out of all the weeks. So this is just straight up kind of Eldrazi Stompy. So the idea with this is Eldrazi Temple had gone down. So it's still 441, which is still pretty expensive. But with it being such an impactful engine piece to that type of archetype, I wanted to try it out. In VV, you get Secluded Courtyard and Unclaimed Territory. So if you can squeeze something like Aether Vial or like Tribal Payoffs in your deck, it's very strong. Eldrazi gets Corrupted Crossroads, which is just essentially copies 9 through 12 of your tribal lands. And then you get Eldrazi Temple too. So you're really functioning at like 15 tribal cards, or typal cards, excuse me. And the idea behind the rest of the deck is that you just are trying to apply as much pressure as possible. I will say this, my list now, this is one slight change. I was playing Ruination Guide, and then now I'm on Val Aggregates. Ruination Guide just didn't perform very well in the online league. It wasn't that it was super weak or anything. It just didn't mesh with the. I think it would be better in a more go wide deck with things like Sky Spawner. But we're really just kind of curving out, beaten down. I was ended up killing people on turn 3 in some matches where I would go turn 1 either Endless One or It That Heralds off the Eldrazi Temple into Linebreaker into Wumpus. So you end up just putting so much pressure on your opponents. There's some decks that actually are playing tap lands early on, just some of the slower control decks. And if you're on the play doing that in the Linebreaker, you just force them to basically have Swords to Plowshares or bust. So you get your free Gigantha as well. But overall, the deck just feels super powerful. It's a lot of powerful hands. I think if we somehow in another Master set or Commander set or something, get an Eldrazi that's kind of around 2 to 3 mana. I know that there's the black one that flies that can edict a creature. I was thinking about exploring that too, but there's just so much that you could build off of this, and it just really needs to just get a little bit lower on the curve. For my matchups that week, I 2-0'd Red-Green Delirium. Red-Green Delirium is very fast. That was actually one of my matches that I got a turn 3 kill. And then I think I killed them on turn 4 the other game. And it wasn't a lack of them doing anything. They were going like Faithless Looting and the Darcy and stuff, but it's just way too much pressure. The next match, I also 2-0'd Jund. They did have some interaction and some removal, but those games went pretty short too. A lot of your bodies end up outsizing a lot of the bolts. Reality Smasher's a 5/5. Titans grows things very quick. And then Chrysalis is really hard to kill just because there's really no window to kill it with a bolt unless they had like triple spell, and you're like never killing Wumpus. The last match was against Hypergenesis again for another week. I lost game 1 to too many big guys off the Hypergenesis. The funny thing was, game 2 I had actually won because I'd put in like 2 guys. They cast Hypergenesis, it resolves. We both start putting things into play. I ended up dumping my entire hand. And I know 2 of the cards were Titan's Vanguards. So while they entered, didn't put any counters on guys. He didn't have enough damage to get through. And the backswing was going to be lethal. So I ended up winning that just by having a better board presence post Hypergenesis. And then game 3, I just applied too much pressure early. I think they had mulliganed down a little bit to, and there was like 5 or 6 cards. And then they just didn't have, anything in the first couple turns. We applied a lot of pressure. So, but I think this deck is super real. I think you have a lot of things that can even outsize Rhinos, which is pretty legitimate. There's a lot going on with it. I have 4 Damping Spheres, just so that way you can try to interact with combo. But even then, even against High Tide, if you can get a turn 3 kill, like avoiding a snap, like that's just good enough. So keep this deck on your radar. I know someone played it at the 1K, I think in Charlotte, and they ended up going, I think, 3-3. I think they said they drew pretty top heavy with the 4s and 5s, which it's definitely real. When you look at the actual like mana curve, it is pretty top heavy. There's 16 copies of things that are over 3, But when you have Eldrazi Temple, it's kind of realistic that you might be able to cast those pretty early on. But I think it could be a variance thing. Maybe I just drew the busted hands and they ended up not getting them. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the deck is real. It's definitely on my list to explore and keep working on. Maybe do a video of it here at some point of an actual league. The next week, I played Mill. I actually renamed this deck Bad, just because I don't think that, at least in its current form, it's good. It's actually over right now on budget. I played against Red Greed Delirium round 1. Excuse me. I went 0-2. Pretty much awful into another graveyard deck. There's really nothing you can do. I was just I think they played turn 1 Darcy, and I maybe I milled them, or I milled them turn 2, and then it was just that Darcy was online, and I milled like a Detective's Phoenix. So just not very good into that. Next round, I played against Yorion Nadu. I ended up winning that match. I lost game 1 to them just doing their thing. Games 2 and 3, I only won because of Jace's Phantasm. So they just couldn't answer the 5/5, and I know the one game I extirpated a Nadu. But that one was like, I knew my night was going to be kind of rough whenever I played Delirium into the Yorion deck. And then round 3, I lost to Creative Technique. It was too slow into their combo. I didn't mill any of their creatives, and like I needed to do that with the extirpates. But I think they got like turn 3 or turn 4 Creative Technique each time. And I wasn't able to mill any of the relevant cards. I think the core package of the deck is pretty sweet. You get a lot of the more powerful mill spells. They're all pretty cheap. The problem is, like, the rest of your cards are kind of dorky. Like, these cards are not very good. And you don't play a ton of permission just because you need enough sources to mill. Crabs are too expensive. The idea is, like, hopefully you can do a couple things, get a Frang Sanity online, and cast, like, 2 more spells to win. But it's just too difficult. I did get the Archive Trap some people for, like, I think I Archive Trapped the Yorion player for 26 or something. Like, so it's close, but I don't know what the deck needs. I kind of shelved it. The idea is I'm going to start renaming things bad if I played them and they seemed really, really, really bad to maybe come back to. But this, I wouldn't recommend trying this deck. I recommend messing with it if it's something that interests you. But if you were looking to build a deck for F&M or take to a 1K, this is not what I would do. I mainly wanted to try this because at the time I was pretty ahead on points. I had like nearly undefeated or undefeated weeks. And I just did not. I wanted to try something new, and I was like, all right, this ain't it. So for the final week, I was mainly wanted to play something pretty serious just so that way I could kind of try to lock top seed, because top 3 or 4 were like all pretty close on points after that bad mill showing. So I had recently built Mono Black. The reason for that, I wanted to try it. So Mono Black's been kind of a mainstay in VV. The reason I wanted to build it in my own variation was because College Football 25 is on Game Pass. Was because Mind Twist is now super cheap because of the Mystery Booster 2 printing. So the idea is either through Soul Ring or Fast Mana and Dark Ritual that you'd be able to get a powerful Mind Twist early. You still have your normal package of Inquisition and Hymn the Torok. And then outside of that, you have a couple other powerful things going on. So Evolved Sleeper, great mana sink, super cheap at 16 cents for Mono Black. Deep Cavern Bat has now finally gone down in price, and it's a pretty good evasive flyer. Very good for initiative. Dark Star Augur is a really good Dark Confidant impression. Really common for you to go like turn 1 Inquisition, see the coast is clear, and then turn 2 Dark Ritual, Offspring, and Augur. And then you just have a lot of flying pressure. You have a lot of card draw on the back of things. And then Torok is just a very powerful card. White is pretty prevalent in VV, especially in the slower mid-range decks and the control decks. So being able to avoid the removal for that is huge. It's also another good thing to Dark Ritual on turn 2. One change from my list at the event compared to what I have now is I cut Caustic Broncos for Spawn of Mayhem. A couple reasons for this. One, Spawn is a pretty sweet thing to Dark Ritual on turn 2 after an Evolved Sleeper hit on 1, so you can start pressuring control and combo decks pretty early. Caustic Bronco also feels pretty bad into the meta right now. You also don't want to crew it with a lot of things. You have a lot of 2s, but not a lot of 3s unless it's multiple bodies. And Spawn's just a huge evasive threat. So Spirits has been pretty popular online. The format's getting more creature-centric overall. So Spawn just being a larger evasive body is just more interesting to me. You have 4 copies of Augur, and it feels like you see Augur in a lot of games. So you really don't need as much of those effects, but sometimes it felt like you didn't have enough pressure, and Spawn really helps close that gap. I like Consuming Corruption. It's able to kill a lot of the creatures in the format right now. Also helps with things like Burn and Rhinos that are racing you. And Victim of Night kills nearly everything I've run into. I will say that there was one matchup. It was actually my first matchup that night that it couldn't kill a Blood Tithe Harvester, and I thought that was kind of funny because it was pretty relevant to the board state at the time. But getting into the actual match, I played against a Rakdos mid-range deck. It wasn't playing Lurrus, but it was playing a lot of kind of later mid-range game, like what is it? The Coalstoke Gearhulk, the new Gearhulk they wanted to try, and the games were very grindy. They were very close. I ended up winning 2-1 over the match. It came down to some mulligans on my opponent. I think the two games I won, they had mulligan down. And then I know that one of them I had a hymn to back that up. After talking to them after, it really came down to the fact that for the most part, I was the aggro deck and they were the control in the matchup. And I just had a lot of early game pressure combined with discard to stay ahead. And that was really relevant for our match. Round 2, I played against Blue White Spirits. I ended up winning game 1. Had some early discard and then a Torok. And then game 2, I ended up losing because they played a Geist that I wasn't able to answer. It came down, I didn't have any discard. It was a more curve hand for me that didn't feature the discard piece to it. I also had 2 Consuming Corruptions that were just kind of dead for a little bit. But Torok was an all-star that game. Ended up winning game 3 on the back of an early Torok, and I just really pressured them. Huge in the matchups where they care about white creatures blocking or Swords to Plowshares, so the card's a house. And then in match 3, I played against a mono-black Necro control list. It was playing Chain of Acid with a couple artifact lands as like a combo piece. But overall, it was mainly just like a mono-black control list playing the Black March. It had, I think, 2 copies of Professor Onyx. It's just mainly trying to land a Necro Dominance and refill, cast some spells. I won 2-0. Game 1 went kind of long, and then game 2 came down to, Necromentia that I had removed, basically their win conditions. I will say game 2, I also had multiple hymns. So they landed a Necro at some point and then just like drew a bunch of cards. But they were pretty low on actual win conditions. And I think it came down to like I had a Necro that I revealed to a Darkstar Augur. And then, somewhat through that turn, they conceded. So after that, I was top on points. So I was top seed. We had kind of like an odd situation with our cuts. So we ended up cutting the top 6. With that, me and the second seed ended up having a round 1 bye. So after the first round where we had our bye, I ended up registering Esper Energy Field. So this is like my pet deck. It's what I ended up playing. It wasn't Esper, but at the first Apex Gaming 1K, I ended up playing Blue-White Energy Field with like 0 games in the format. Just wanted to try it out. Seemed sweet. I ended up getting second. There was 30 some people there for that. So I was hooked. I've kept this deck. I actually have it almost entirely foil now. But the deck is super sweet. It's definitely my like not so secret sauce for larger events, wanting to play it if I'm like really wanting to win. anytime that there's an event that seems to qualify for the end of year points, is what I normally fall back on. And knowing kind of the rest of the field, I figured there'd be a heavy combo deck, a couple of aggro or mid-range decks. Unless it's like super linear fast combo, this deck's poised very well. So the main lock is Energy Field, which you've seen on screen here. It just prevents all damage that'll be dealt for you, and then if a card's put in your graveyard, you sacrifice it, and then you play it alongside Rest in Peace, so no cards can go to your graveyard. So there's very few effects that can actually get through this in the format, so that's why it's poised super well. It's just really an underplayed deck. I really like mine. I ended up playing this recently, actually, at the Apex Con for their Saturday event, and I ended up getting first with it again. So it's very strong, super, super great list. It's super flexible. You're basically just a blue-white control deck. You can splash an additional color just because the landscapes are super free. You want to play them with Brain Surge anyway. But you're just blue-white X, and then with some support staff, right? So I'm normally in on some walkers. I recently added Narset to the list. The Folly of Drown Yard's a huge win condition. I ended up nearly milling out High Tide in a match. They ended up conceding because they knew they weren't going to be able to win, so I appreciate them doing that. And then a lot of flexible sideboard options. I'm a huge Blood Baron fan in the format for the mid-range and control decks. Really good against Initiative, really good against Swords of Plowshares, Mono Black, Humans, just all around really solid card. There's obviously a nostalgia element for that too for anyone playing, Dragon's Maze, Gatecrash era. But yeah, the deck is super flexible. You really just get a couple of, core cards here. But then outside of that, I mean, you could do a lot with this list. So I ended up registering it. Round 1, I played against Burn. I ended up keeping a starting hand that was Blue-Black Land Island, but it had 2 Absorb. I didn't know they were playing Burn, but it had a Lose Focus and 2 Absorbs, I know that. And then when they turn 1 Lava Spiked, I knew that I needed to draw the white source. I ended up drawing it for turn 3. It was a Glacial Fortress. So double Absorb was huge. I ended up setting up Energy Field against them, and they didn't have a main deck way to deal with it. For game 2, I ended up bringing in Test of Talents, Spell Pierces, Boon Bringers, and Blood Barons. You end up taking out a lot of the slower cards, a lot of the slower pieces. And I had Test of Talents a Stomp because they were just stomping me on an end step at one point before I had Energy Field set up. So I Test of Talents the Stomp, even though it wasn't going to exile the other Bone Crushers. But it let me look through their deck so that way I could see what they were playing. They didn't have any copies of Skullcrack. The only option they had to break the lock was one other copy of Bone Crusher. So I ended up just keeping counter magic up for a couple turns. Ended up resolving the lock, and they knew that they had an out in Bone Crusher Giant. Eventually, they ended up casting it on an end step, and I had the counter spell, so they conceded. So they knew that they weren't going to be able to break through the lock, so that was a 2-0 versus Burn. The last round was the same Hypergenesis player and basically the same combo player I played multiple rounds. He's a local to me that I've known for a really long time, so I knew sitting down into that match that I was probably going to be getting comboed super fast. He was playing Hypergenesis. Really fast combo is a tough matchup for this deck. It's that kind of archetype outside of High Tide is pretty rough. We don't have a whole lot of options outside of like Spell Pierce. If they go for like a turn 1 or sometimes even a turn 2. If you can get to at least turn 2 or 3, you're set up. You should be good to go. Game 1, he got it on he was on the draw, and he went for it on my turn 3. Like, he was on his turn 3. He goes for the Cascade. I had a counter spell for the Hypergenesis, but he was on main deck Mystical Dispute, which is a pretty cool meta call. And he just had too many things to put in play. I didn't have an answer for it. Game 2 was super long. I ended up resolving a Unmoored Ego on Hypergenesis. I had countered the first one. I had enough counter spells to interact. and then I unmoored Ego Hypergenesis. He had no more copies, so his plan then was just to kind of cast fatties. I was able to counter really all of them, and then just after setting up for a really long time, I just kind of colonnaded him to death. I hit him for colonnade for like 7 or 8 times, but I was able to get the kill there that game. And then game 3 he went turn 2 Soul Land, or Sack Soul Land. I think it was like Havenwood Battleground, I think's the name of it. But he did that. I went tapped land because I had a counter spell on 2. Then he went land shardless, put a bunch in. I wasn't exactly dead yet. I still had outs in balance or depopulate, but didn't end up drawing it. That's the type of thing where, like, candidly, when I lost the first Apex event, we actually did a world style where we did best of 5, and I lost 3 and out to Oops All Spells, just because there were a couple times they actually went for it turn 1. So those decks aren't as common. I will say Oops has fallen off a lot just because of the price point, and Leyline and Ravenous Trap both kind of beat up that deck now. The Hypergenesis, fast combos, those decks are definitely real. A lot of people don't really talk about them, but I think it's something at this point I'd really just slot it in if I'm going to an event I want to be prepared for. That being said, I'm not going to update Esper Field to do anything super crazy with it. You could do some things like playing foil. You can play more copies of Spell Pierce in the sideboard. I think that's actually fine. I really like how I have my 15, and I'm just kind of hedging that. Hopefully, they have either the turn 2 or 3 hands, or I have like the Spell Pierces. So if it ends up becoming a substantial piece of the format, I would definitely go up the 4 Spell Pierce. There's something like Minor Misstep 2. That's a pretty solid card overall. I'm starting to slot that into some of my decks in the sideboards. But yeah, that was like I said, he goes by Ketzer in the Discord. He's a buddy of mine, so congratulations to him. He ended up actually not winning the prize. Just wanted the end of year invitational, so I'm sure that prize will go towards a later event, which is pretty cool. But he's got some really good Cascade lists going around. He actually made the top 4 of the Apex Con event recently. He was playing Restore Balance, so another Cascade deck. So definitely a very popular thing going on. But overall, I was really happy with how the way all the lists except for Mill performed. All of them are very viable options. You can find them all on my Mox Field. They're all listed under the Arcanium. Additionally, I did play Burn for a league. You can check that out. It's also on the YouTube channel here. But if you are not already, go ahead and follow the channel, subscribe, and check out the Value Vintage Discord in the description. We do a lot of online events. There's a lot of just pickup games that happen. There will be a 1K coming up on, I believe it is the 19th of April. It is free. It is being run by The Gathering, and it's free entry, and it is a legitimate 1K. So it's going to be run through MTGO, so you can check that out. It's also going to be streamed. All that info is in the Discord. And then there's also a lot of paper play that happens. So if you are in any of the states that are listed as channels in the Discord, you're able to find where the local events are and get some games. I know that we also have some things coming later this year outside of Apex. And I know that the NRG events are starting to pick it up. So there's a lot of sweet things happening with the format. But yeah, definitely check out the Discord. It has a lot of information. Check out my channel and the Mox Field for other deck ideas. And let me know what you think of the video. This is kind of different than what I've been really doing, but trying to do more than just the gameplay for you guys. So if this is something you want to see more of, some recaps, more than happy to. I can go through my Apex weekend. I ended up playing 2 different decks for that, if that's something you're interested in, and recap my different matches there. But whatever you want to see, I'm always down to give you guys some more content since it's kind of light right now in the early sessions of VV. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys being here, and I hope to see you again.